Just getting the feeds going. All right, welcome back to the Outdoor Call Radio Network. It's Outdoors Dan. It's time for one of the fun shows I look forward to every week. It's a little different than what we normally do, but it's called the Unknown Files Show. We've been doing this, it's what 16 months now. It's crazy, and thanks to everybody across the country that chimes in and listens, and we appreciate that. We're going to have a fun show for you. The show is brought to you in part by our friends out at Revelton Distillery in Osceola, Iowa. They are the official spirit of the Unknown Files Show. We're going to be visiting with author and haunting historian Troy. Did I get that right? Yeah, Troy Taylor. And yeah, I'm still lagging from the Deer Classic. Troy was on last year. He's over in Illinois. He's just a prolific author. And go check out his Facebook feeds. We were just talking offline that I enjoy reading his feeds quite a bit. Troy, good evening. How you doing?
Hey man, how are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. Are you
Good.
sliding back over the other way again?
Probably. Yeah, probably so. Oh.
Well,
I'm
I
moving
don't want.
everything now. Yes. Yeah.
Well,
I've
I don't
now
want him.
moved everything in front of me.
I don't
So
want him to see just half of you.
yeah, well, that's okay. So
How's American Hauntings been? How you been doing?
good. Busy. Even for the off year. We came out of last year. We had or last month rather. We had our big annual food drive, which is kind of like the highlight of the month. So that's always a big deal. So we did that last month, and then I was in a bit of recovery, and then went right into the next big thing, which was buying a museum and completely redoing it. So yeah.
Where's the museum at?
It is in Alton, Illinois.
Really?
I had an event space in the Mineral Springs Hotel, which is the old haunted hotel that's in downtown Alton. And I mean, I've been doing stuff there for what year is this? So probably 20, almost 25 years I've been around the Mineral Springs and things. But a couple of years ago, I put in an event space and started doing themed dinners and a lot of different stuff. That's where we had our food drive. We do a lot of stuff there. And there had been a museum there years ago. And then another guy had bought it and turned it into, I don't know, I would say kind of an oddball museum. But then he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. So I bought it from him. And we are now opening the American Oddities Museum this coming Saturday. So yeah,
Well, next time I get home, I'm going to have to come and see that because
yeah, you're gonna have to come
yeah,
by. Yeah.
that's neat. That's close to. I was born in Belleville a long, long time ago
Oh
in the
yeah, yeah.
Galaxy
You're just right
Park.
down the road, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I grew up in St. Louis, so that's
Sure.
the mom and my brothers are still back home, so that's crazy. How did American Hauntings get started?
Well, let's see. In 1993, I decided that I didn't like working real jobs. And so I don't know, I'm just kidding.
No, I
I
get
started it's about right, but I started writing around that time, and that was in 93 is when I first started publishing some of the stuff I was writing, and then my first book came out a little after that. And around that same time I started a tour company in Decatur, Illinois, which is where I was living at the time. And that became my first tours, my first books, and I just kind of kept going from there. Never imagining it would actually turn into a full-time career, but I mean, it took a long time before it finally did that. But once it did, that's all I've ever done. So, and honestly, that's about all I've ever done anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, Tony. Hey, Rick. Rick, good to see you at the Iowa Deer Classic, Rick. Thanks for coming by, you and Patrick. Really appreciate that. I've always, we had last time we had you on here. I just ever since I was a little kid, I love ghost stories, and the Midwest has had so many of them. And I don't think you and I talked about it, but I grew up in Washington, Missouri, which is about 45 minutes
yeah,
west of St. Louis, and
yeah,
across the river we had the old Daniel Boone home, which is
right,
over there by I think Femi Osage or in that area. But
yeah.
there was always a lot of weird stuff happening over in that area.
Oh yeah, well, it's been, considered haunted for years. I did a book called The Big Book of Missouri Ghost Stories, and it's in there.
Yeah, is it
We
Daniel Boone?
also had that. You guys also had a brewery in
Yeah,
Washington, yeah, that
yeah,
has gotten a reputation for being haunted too over the years. So
yeah. That's that big white one up on the hill. Gosh darn it, I'm starting to forget home because I've been in Des Moines now
was
for
it a? It was a brother of
Lamp.
Adolphus Bush, I think.
Yeah, I can't
Well,
remember. It
see,
wasn't.
now I can't remember either. I
Yeah,
want to say that it might have been a relative. It's either a relative of the Limps or a relative of the Bushes, and I'm not sure which.
well, they
I
were all
can't
they were all
remember.
good friends. AJ, good to see
Yeah.
you.
Oh
Thanks
yeah.
for watching again. Appreciate you, AJ. And I don't know. I know downtown Washington's got some stories, and I think every small town's got the one
Oh
place,
sure.
But it's the landing was a watering hole that I used to like going eating lunch or dinner. They had great pizza and wings. They're still open, but they said the third floor always had stuff moving around and breaking, and that's right down on the riverfront.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, every town's got them. You just have to look for them.
yeah.
I try to tell people that. Well, what can you tell me about my town? And I'm like, I don't know, man. You tell me. You live there. I don't. I
You,
don't. And
that
it's easy to go find it. You just have to know where to look.
that'd
So
be a
here's
great
where you
book,
look.
though. That'd be
You
a great
know.
book. Just have people submit stories.
Yeah, I've thought about stuff like that. The problem with it, where it doesn't. Here's the thing. It's not that it's not interesting, but for me as a writer, it doesn't interest me because stories like firsthand accounts are
Yeah.
cool to hear,
Right.
but I don't want to write everybody's up
Okay.
because there's no history there and there's nothing to write about. It's just a firsthand account. And while it is cool to the people that happen to and the people are telling it to, it's not necessarily fun to write, you know.
Yeah. Hey Cheryl, how's it going? Now there's another Illinois folk for you. Now she does a Cheryl. Text your name of your group in there. Illinois Paranormal Research Group. If you haven't met Cheryl Torres, Troy, you need to meet her. Super nice lady. But they
Oh,
do a lot
cool.
of they go and do a lot of investigations and stuff all across the Midwest and stuff.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What gets you more fired up? Ghost stories or true crime?
Um, both when I can, especially when I can combine them. But I really like both. I love the history behind both things. I don't write a lot about fairly current crime. It's not that it's not offensive or anything to me or anybody else. I don't think when you write about it normally anyway. But there's just something about it that's not as interesting to me as the historical stuff.
Gotcha.
Normally, I don't get much newer, but it creeps. I'm finding that the older I get, the more it creeps. And suddenly, when I talk about, oh, I don't write anything that's more than less than 50 years old. Well, wait a minute, that's it's only 1974 now. So it's crept up. It used to be like 1950. That was as new as I would get, but I'm finding that some stuff I do find interest in things that are getting. But so I like both, but I really love to be able to combine the two. If I can combine a true crime story with a ghost story, that's perfect for me.
You better tell whoever's at the house to get off the bandwidth. I'm starting to lose you a little bit.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's
you're.
weird.
Yeah,
There's nobody here. I'm the
yeah.
only one here.
Yeah,
Um,
you're
huh.
goat now. There you go. That's a little better. It's the ghost.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, I
the
was gonna
ghost,
say
Troy.
I've got my extender on and everything. Well, we'll say it is because maybe it is. I don't know.
And your light just went out. Yeah, I can't hear you.
I noticed that too, but that was a timer.
No, that's okay.
That was a timer.
Yeah, that's weird. Hey, Brian, good to see you tonight. Thank you, Illinois Paranormal Research Group. Cheryl, there you go. Troy, you want to try to reconnect real quick? Disconnect and reconnect. Ac-
Sure.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, I
breaking.
can.
Yeah,
I don't know what's happening. There's no one here but me. But okay.
yeah. It's the band. So we got a bad. We'll get him back on. That's all right. That's what I love about live radio, man. You just never know what's going to happen, right? That's crazy. And I've been looking forward to Troy for about 6 months because he's just got some great stories, man. I want to get into some of these stuff when he calls me back here. So let's see. Hopefully, I'll hear back from him here real quick, and we'll get him back on. So yeah, there we go. He's joining. Let's see if we get him back. I got audio. There you are.
Got me back? Okay.
That's way better. Thank you.
All right, good deal. Yeah, no problem.
So let's talk about Bernie Shelton. That's a true crime story. Can you tell the folks about that?
To tell you the entire story of the Shelton brothers would take a, a very long time.
Yeah.
But the Shelton brothers grew up. They were part of the one of the gangs of Southern Illinois who, during Prohibition, moved a lot of bootleg liquor. They got involved in a lot of gambling. Went to war with another guy named Charlie Berger, who operated on the other side of the state. And for about a year or so, they spent a lot of time trying to kill each other. Eventually, Charlie went to jail for the murder of the mayor of a town outside of Benton and was hanged. And that kind of left things for the Sheltons, and they were at that point operating in East St. Louis. They had been for years, but a new sheriff came along and kind of ran them out of the county. And so they kind of scattered, went a little further north towards central Illinois, especially to Peoria, where they kind of set up their new headquarters. And it was in Peoria where they really made their fortunes. They had a governor of Illinois at the time who was very pro gambling and let them get away with murder, sometimes literally. And they did what they wanted for years until a new mayor came along in Peoria and ran him out of the city, and they operated then right on the outskirts. And Bernie, after his brother Carl left the area for the most part, Bernie kind of took over. And Bernie had always been the brother that was the hard one to get along with, the guy, the enforcer. The guy who, took no guff from anybody, was a rough, pretty dangerous guy, and didn't change as he got any older. He never mellowed, for sure. But he was operating out of a place called the Parkway Tavern. And eventually, in the summer of 48, I believe, 47, he was shot to death outside of the tavern. And his ghost, speaking of combining, true crime and ghosts, his ghost haunted the tavern for years and years afterward. Eventually, the owner said that he left, but he was there for a very long time. And people thought it was him because of how unfriendly the ghost was. That's what they always said.
He just didn't want to be around anybody, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, doors would slam on people and, they'd get kind of a menacing feeling around the place. And that's, what made the newspapers. And those are the stories that were told.
There was so much gang activity in the 30s and 40s. What was Capone in the 30s, or that was in the 20s?
He
Or
was more in the 20s. Yeah,
yeah,
he was indicted and went to prison in 30 and 31 is when he finally went to Atlanta and then out to Alcatraz. So,
yeah.
but his operation continued. After that, I mean, the other guys just took over the outfit. Well, I mean, technically they're still around, but it's nothing like it used to be, of course. But they tried very hard to take over the Shelton's operation after after Capone was gone, after Charlie Berger was gone. They tried to move in on him and couldn't do it. In fact, it wasn't. Once they ran out of East St. Louis, they had a guy down there that the outfit kind of ran, and his name was oh gosh, oh my mind is Buster Workman. So Workman took over for the Sheltons in the St. Louis, and Chicago ran him for years. And they were trying to get rid of the Sheltons. In fact, somebody killed Carl. They killed their older brother Roy. Tried to kill the entire family numerous times, and it's probably Capone's guys who, down the road, who got Bernie outside that tavern in Peoria.
Cheryl said something with our John Looney. Was there a John Looney mixed in that?
Yeah, up in the Rockford, the Quad Cities area. He
Yeah.
ran that area for quite a while. He's the guy that Paul Newman's character is based on. If you've seen Road to Perdition,
Oh yeah,
they
yeah.
call him Rooney in the movie, but he's based on John Looney. The character is based on. And yeah, he ran that area for quite a while. Eventually, like so many of those guys did, he, pretty much lost everything eventually. But unlike most of them, did not did not end up being shot to death. He actually died of old age. So it doesn't happen very often.
You know, with all that gang violence and everything in the 20s and the 30s, there's got to be just a plethora of haunting documented hauntings, or just
Oh
stories
yeah.
and stuff all the way down from Chicago through Peoria and southern Illinois.
Well, there are a lot of them. You end up with like the last all that Charlie Berger was in was haunted. One of the victims, a woman who was murdered with her husband, who was a friend of Charlie's that they thought was an informer, and they murdered him, murdered her. Her ghost haunted the place where her body was found for years. There are stories about the Parkway Tavern where Bernie died. And of course, Chicago's got plenty of them, from the St. Valentine's Day Massacre site to all these different places where there were, guys shot to death and murdered and, all kinds of stuff,
Yeah,
connected to the mob.
yeah, because I know in Iowa, Capone used to go up to Fort Dodge, Iowa, and he'd had a place up there he used to hang out when the heat got too much for him.
Yeah, there are quite a few legitimate places where Capone used to go, but I have also found, at least in Illinois, I found that the Capone used to hang out here. Capone used to live here. Capone used to stay here. It's kind of like the Abraham Lincoln used to sleep here kind of
Yeah,
thing.
George Washington lived
Everybody
there.
wants to put Capone in a place, and half the time, while they were mob places, Capone was probably never there, but it was some other gangster that nobody knew who he was. But Capone was famous, so that makes the story better.
Yeah, now they got a
I run
plaque.
those down a lot.
Oh yeah, they got a plaque and everything up there. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Hey, staying with Chicago, I want to talk about Resurrection Mary. Has there been anything new on that in the last 5, 10 years? Or did they still see sightings? Did they still get reportings and stuff for her?
Not very often. I don't hear much anymore. But there may be a reason for that. I mean, other than now, it's kind of hard to take it seriously. So if somebody came to me tomorrow and told me they saw Resurrection Mary, you've got to think, okay, so what book do they read? What
Right.
it's not like it used to be where it wasn't highly publicized. But I think that when you go back, when I look at it historically, and I went through and trace back everything I could find. I've got photographs of Mary Bergovi, who I think was the original Resurrection Mary, and things that I've been able to get from people who lived in the area, who had their own stories to tell, who were still alive, telling these stories about encounters they had. There were times when Mary wouldn't be seen for a long time. And usually that had something to do with things just being quiet where she was buried, which sounds odd because I mean, I know graveyards seem spooky, but there isn't a lot of reason for graveyards to be haunted because normally places that are haunted are places where people lived and had activity in their life. So
Right.
graveyards, not really, but there are certain things that do seem to make them haunted, and one of them is disturbances in the burial ground. And there was a lot of sightings of Mary through the 30s, and then through the 40s, things were pretty quiet. In fact, through the 50s and even into the 60s, there was nothing. Then all of a sudden, in the early to mid 70s, there were sightings going on constantly. It was happening like every week. And the reason why, as it turns out, I think, anyways, theory, they were actually not remodeling, but renovating the cemetery. They were actually moving all of the term graves of people who'd been buried in temporary areas who couldn't afford a burial plot. Supposedly, the families were saving up for it. It's a Catholic cemetery. They were saving up for it, but they could never afford it. The bodies were just left there
Oh,
in mostly unmarked graves. Well, they were moving all those into another part of the cemetery to make more room. Well, suddenly, all of these sightings start taking place again. It's like everything got stirred up.
yeah.
And then, came the 80s, the 90s, and it just dropped off. And I think that now I don't think it happens nearly as often because things are so quiet.
Well, I just
That's
didn't know
the bigger reason.
With the Uber craze and everything, Troy. If she was trying to catch an Uber lately.
Yeah, right, exactly. So she has no cell phone, so she's got no way to get a car, and nobody wants to pick up a hitchhiker anymore,
Yeah,
and there aren't any cabs. So
yeah,
yeah, maybe that's it.
yeah. She doesn't have an app for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Jerry Hall says Sasquatch is messing with our Wi-Fi. So that's funny. Thanks, Jerry. All right, I got it. Speaking of Bigfoot, I got to ask you. I was going through your timeline on your Facebook stuff, and I came across the 1987 kidnapping by Bigfoot story. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, and you notice I put that in quotation marks on the story because while, not to get, somehow I got onto this topic with somebody the other day about Bigfoot, and it turned into this whole long, like half-hour discussion on the possibilities of Bigfoot. I'm not saying there isn't one. I really don't know. I'm certainly not an expert, but in this particular case, pretty darn sure there was no real Bigfoot involved in this story. But yeah, it took place in '87 and involved a 16-year-old girl named Teresa Beer. And she lived in Sierra Nevadas in California, hot spot for Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
But she disappeared. She's never been found. But, I laugh and we kind of laugh about the story with the Bigfoot stuff. But I won't get into the really dark stuff here, but it's pretty awful. This girl lived a terrible life. And, she was being, molested and mistreated by people and abused. And, she goes off into the mountains with a friend of her dad's, this guy who's a 43-year-old house painter who lives on disability checks. So he's already sounding sketchy
Yeah, that's not
before we
good.
could get anywhere. And he loved to tell stories and talked about Bigfoot. He was obsessed with Bigfoot and used to spend his time out there looking. And took Teresa out there with him one day, and came back, but Teresa never did. And he tried to convince the police and everybody else that she had been kidnapped by Bigfoot, and that's what happened to her. He never would ever tell the truth. That was the story he stuck by. But they really think that she was abducted and maybe killed either by him or by somebody else.
Oh, that's
And
awful. I
so
didn't
it's
know.
kind of a
Yeah,
grim
I didn't know.
story. Yeah, it's not a great story.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
know she got. I didn't know that she disappeared. I thought she came back and said
Yeah,
Bigfoot took me.
yeah, she never no, she never came back. He was charged with child endangerment and abduction, and, they were gonna prosecute him for murder, but they never did because they never found her body.
No, that's awful.
So and then he died, a little while later from, like, a coronary disease, and yeah, Teresa's never been found. So
Yeah,
it's yeah, it's silly when you think about, what they were trying to say, but on the other hand, yeah, it's a grim story. It's
yeah,
pretty
that's not
bad.
good at all.
Now, I mean, now you might remember a few years ago, there's a funnier one though. The 3-year-old kid a few years ago, remember this one? It was like in Virginia or somewhere. And he talked about how he got lost in the woods overnight and they found him and they couldn't understand how he'd survived. And he kept saying, and so he made up a story about how a man and a big hairy man had carried him away and kept him warm. And everybody got all excited about it being about it being Bigfoot. And I'm like, guys, have you never met a 3-year-old? Because they'll tell you anything. They don't,
yeah.
they don't care. So, so yeah, that was a little funnier. The Teresa story, not so funny. So,
And growing up in Missouri, we had Momo the Monster. Remember
oh
Momo the
sure,
Monster
yeah,
back
yeah,
in
oh yeah,
back in the
absolutely,
'70s and stuff. And
yeah,
I'll be honest with you, Troy. After doing the show and talking with some of the people that I talked to, I can't say it's real, but what's a lot of the footprints and and anatomy of the footprints back in the '50s and '60s with the
yeah,
dermal ridges and stuff. I mean, how do you?
sure,
I can't discount that because
yeah.
who's gonna know? Who's gonna know or have the
Well,
mindset
yeah, these
to
guys,
fake
these
that?
construction workers and
Right.
hunters and stuff with no knowledge of that stuff come up with these footprints.
Yeah.
And, that seems credible, and I agree with you. And I've never been the idea that it's impossible because I keep thinking about all that vast forest land out there,
Yeah.
and how easy it would be for something like this to just, I mean, think of all the people that go missing out in the woods every year. So why not, why couldn't there be a Bigfoot out there? But on the other hand, I have a lot of stories that come from much more populated places, and that seems a little harder to believe. And I guess my big problem with it is that after all this time, why haven't we caught one or really, really come up with something credible? You know what I mean? Why? We can capture all these animals and bring home big game, but not Bigfoot in our own backyard. I don't. That's my problem. I guess, or not a problem,
I
but
don't know.
I'm always curious why not.
I got half the faction saying it's more of a spiritual creature. Some people said it's flesh
I
and
know.
blood.
I hear that too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's going to be neat if we ever do get definitive proof one way or another. Hey Troy, I'm losing you again. I'm going to take a quick break and I'm going to have you come back and disconnect or come back.
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back after these few words with our guest, Mr. Troy Taylor, American Hauntings, on the Outdoor Call Radio Network. Don't go anywhere.
Let's talk about a story, an Iowa story
I don't know how.
that took several years to come true in Osceola.
I don't know how to lose
Story
stuff.
of Revelton Distilling Company. These fine distilled whiskeys, gins, and vodkas were born from the labor of Rob and Christina Taylor. It's amazing hearing the customers' descriptions of how unique each bottle looks and how each spirit tastes and satisfies with every sip. From the honey whiskey to the whiskey and cream, or the robust mulberry gin, American gin, or vodkas. Revelton Distilling visitors.
He'll be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. If you got questions, let me know.
Revelton Distillery is open Wednesday through Sunday in Osceola. They're located at 1400 West Clay Street, right off I-35. Revelton Distillery fine spirits are also available at your local grocery and other retailers around Iowa. Please check them out online at reveltondistillery.com or visit them at the distillery. If it's time to celebrate or just time to sit back and unwind, well, then it's time for a Revelton moment.
OnX Hunt helps hunters be more successful in the field each season, with maps of all public and private land and a fully functional GPS without service.
Can you hear me, Troy?
Over 6
Yeah.
million users.
You're still dedigitizing a little bit. It's weird.
I have cut. I turned off everything. I've got nothing going here, and there's no one here but me. I'm not sure what's happening.
On top of that, OnX is
Normally I've got pretty good Wi-Fi. Let me move. I've got a booster. Let me check and make sure it's on.
All right.
I'll try moving it closer.
Driving to your next hunting location. These are just a few of the many updates OnX has for this hunting season. Try OnX Hunt free for 7 days or go to onxmaps.com/hunt and use code X for 20% off your new OnX Hunt membership. Try OnX Hunt free for 7 days or go to onxmaps.com/hunt and use code X for 20% off your new OnX Hunt membership.
In these times when a lot of us are working from home, it's even more important to make sure your home is the right temperature and comfortable. Now is a great time to call the experts at Wyckoff Heating and Cooling at 287-6000 to schedule a check on your current heating and cooling systems. Is your house too dry and giving your family issues? A Honeywell dehumidifier system installed with your AC heating system can solve that issue right away. Wyckoff Heating and Cooling is a family-owned and operated business that has been serving Iowa residents and businesses for over 70 years. They offer 24-hour service and programs like the Peace of Mind Plan for less than $15 a month. So if you want more time on the water or in the woods this year, please call the folks at Wyckoff Heating and Cooling for any of your home or business heating and cooling needs. One call to Wyckoff Heating and Cooling will bring you peace of mind under your roof every day.
All right, welcome back to Unknown Files. We're here with Mr. Troy Taylor, American Hauntings author and historian, and we're talking a little bit about some spooky stuff and true crime across the Midwest. Troy, you back there, buddy? Can you hear me? I'm starting to think it's poltergeist, Troy. He's locked up. Hello, Troy. Troy to Earth to Troy. Let me see if we can do this. I'm going to try and just call him and see if we can't do this audio this way. So at least we can talk to him and go from there. Let me get this on here. Let me get him on there. Yeah, he got it on. He's got it on Do Not Disturb. So, Troy, you there, buddy? Let me cut him loose. Try, call me back, buddy. All right. I got to tell you. Now, see, this is how you do right. This. Here we go. Let's see if this works here. Testing 1, 2, 3. Troy, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I can hear you sneeze.
Yeah, I sneezed. Can you not see me either?
I can see you. Yeah, you're still
Okay.
breaking up. You want me to just call you back on your cell phone?
Sure. I mean, I've got it right here. We can
Yeah,
do it.
let me just. Well, you go ahead and disconnect there, and give me 10 seconds, and I'll call you back on your cell.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, we're gonna say cut the video here real quick. There we go, and you guys are stuck with me now for just a little bit, and then I'm gonna call Troy, and let's see if we can get this going here, and it'll be so much better.
Here we are.
There you go. I can actually hear you. Everybody,
Yeah.
this is Troy. Say hi, Troy.
Yeah. What was going on there?
Oh, that's all right. You know,
First time I've ever had a problem with it.
I'm telling you, man, it's the spirits. It's crazy.
Must be.
Daryl Adams down in Oklahoma. Good to see you. Thank you. He is froze. Yeah, Cheryl. I saw that, Cheryl. I saw that. I said, I saw it, Sarah. I saw it. All right. Well, Hotel Josephine. What's up with that?
The one out in Kansas, that one I don't know that well. That was a friend of mine. She put that together. In fact, at the time, she was trying to buy the place because it was for sale.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not sure. I know that there was some activity and things. We did an event there. And I think people enjoyed it. They were impressed with the activity that they found. But I don't know much about the history of it. That was a little bit more on my friend Becky.
Okay.
Put that together.
I saw a little clip. I thought I'd ask you about that.
Yeah.
What's the most prolific thing in Central Illinois that people might not have heard about? That's been just a crazy story for you.
Well, I would say that as far as stories for me have gone, I would have to probably go with probably the Lincoln Theater in Decatur. That's right in the middle of Illinois, and I haven't lived there in a while, but it was always, and I've been back since then, but it was always a place where you could almost count on weird things happening, and apparently they still are. I just talked to somebody the other day who said that they were there and had an experience with. She said, you always used to talk about how the chairs and things would move around and open and close, and somebody would tap you on the back and things. She said, we were just sitting there watching a show, and somebody kept kicking my seat. She said, I turned around to tell them to stop. There was nobody behind me at all, anywhere. And so this was a place that had been around since 1916. That's when it was built. It had been built right on the site of an old hotel that used to be there in town. And there had been a fire the year before the theater was built. And there had been a number of people, guests at the hotel, who died during the fire. And I always theorized that probably some of the ghosts were probably those people, because there hadn't been any deaths during the time when it was a theater. It was a vaudeville house for quite a number of years, and eventually turned into a movie theater, as a lot of them did, and then it went out of business. And then it's been kind of revived over the years, trying to turn it into kind of a live performance kind of place. And
Gotcha.
that's when, I used to spend a lot of time in that building, and I had a lot of experiences there myself. And I think, as we talked about before when I was on with you, I'm not a psychic. I don't see dead people. Don't talk to dead people. So when if it's a place that I go to and I have experiences, for me anyway, that's always impressive, because I feel like I'm about as psychic as a doorpost. So I don't, but yeah, I had a lot of things that happened there, and it's not a place that's common to people outside the area. Not really. Not
Okay.
so much.
Hey, I got a question from Cliff in St. Charles, Missouri. Cliff wants to know, what have you ever been to a dinner theater or like a Broadway theater that actually had where they had shadow people or apparitions on the stage at any time?
You mean while the show was going on, or
Well,
just in general?
I think he means if people have well documented people seeing stuff on the stage and stuff.
Oh yeah, well, the Lincoln would be one. That would be a perfect example of that, of people performing there and having things happening on the stage. I had friends who were musicians who performed in a concert where they were putting on there, and they kept talking about being up on the stage and seeing seats going up and down. But the one thing that a whole group of us experienced there one day during their rehearsals, they were playing through a song, they messed it up, and they stopped. And when they stopped, there was this voice out in the auditorium that went real loud. Loud enough
Really?
that everybody on stage heard it. Like just a sigh of disgust. But as far as during the shows, and there has been some of that, and I hear stories about it. I haven't really experienced it myself. I do know, like, the Woodstock Opera House up in Woodstock, Illinois, is known for people seeing apparitions and things on the stage, and also out in the audience. That seems to be almost more common than people talking about it on the stage, or
Yeah.
audience members, or at least people associated with the theater who were in the auditorium or out the seats.
That'd be kind of disturbing if you were on stage and you're seeing seats go up and down by themselves.
Yeah, but that was something that was commonly reported there.
Really?
A lot, yeah, and like I said, people still talk about it. People still talk about people tapping on the seats. Years ago, we did a couple of our conferences there, and this has been like the late 2000s, the 2007, 2008. And we'd have a lot of activity during a lot of our events. People would report, having somebody sitting behind them or bumping their seat, and they turn around thinking somebody's walking past and there's nobody there. But yeah, that's something that people always talked about, seeing the seats going up and down, like somebody who'd been sitting there and then getting up, and those spring-loaded seats, just pop back into place.
Yeah, that's crazy. Ben in Granite City, Illinois, wants to know about Cahokia Mounds. Is there any documentation, or are they still having weird things happen out there?
I've heard some things over the years. Not really as far as, ghost-like, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of people will talk about hearing voices out there or things like that, but I don't hear about it a lot, just because I don't think they don't talk about it much.
Yeah.
So the stories that come out are usually coming from people who have visited there or something, and a lot of people don't use their names, so it's hard to know how accurate all the stories are.
Yeah,
I haven't heard anything lately. But,
yeah. Tell everybody what that is, Troy, for people listening on the East Coast and everything.
Sure.
Tell them.
Well, yeah, Cahokia Mounds. Cahokia, as they call it, Cahokia was, I guess you would say, the oldest city, not only in Illinois, but anywhere kind of in the central part of the country. And by city, I mean that it was a massive, mostly earthen and wood mound city, inhabited by, indigenous Native American people. And at the time that it was at its greatest population, it was like 5 times the size of the city of London in the very same time period. It was a huge area, a lot of people there. But then one day they just all packed up and moved away and left it and abandoned the place. And to this day, they don't really know why. There are a lot of theories that maybe it had something to do with overpopulation. It could have kind of religious significance, or all kinds of different theories about why they left. But for some reason, they just abandoned the area. And then later, when the French started to settle in Illinois, or what would be Illinois in the 1600s, they discovered these massive burial mounds of, just filled with bodies. And, a lot of them were temples. Others were, solar observatories, and a lot of things, I guess that you would say that they were probably around the same time as the Aztec and the Maya in Mexico and that kind of thing. And a lot of similarities there in the way that they built things. And today it's, it's a park, state park. It is a national, like a world heritage site, and it's a great place to visit if you ever get the chance.
And Ben, I still hear people saying they see UFOs over there a lot. So
yeah, I could understand why there'd be an attraction to that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of crazy. Going back to Bigfoot, I was going to ask you about this because I don't think we talked about it last time we had you on, but in between there, I found out about the Jerseyville. Is it Jerseyville, Illinois? The Mud Monster?
Oh no, that is down in Murfreesboro.
Murfreesboro, Mud Monster.
Yeah, the mud monster down by Carbondale.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of those kind of, and there was a lot of that kind of stuff in the 70s, but that was one of those kind of a period of, not too terribly long after Momo,
right,
actually, over in Louisiana, Missouri. But this was They called it the Mud Monster because when it was seen, it was not like your normal Bigfoot in that it wasn't some big brown, monstrous sized creature. It wasn't gigantic. It was maybe a little larger than a regular person, but it was covered in white fur, but it was streaked with mud, which
Right.
is how it got its name, right out of the Big Muddy River. And it smelled horrible. That was the one thing everybody knew. Before they even saw it, they smelled it first. Right. And this thing was around for a week or so, I guess. But it never, it was never caught, seen by a lot of people. There were stories that went around, people from all over the world writing into the police department there and trying to suggest ideas how to catch it and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it made the news, that's for sure. It was a big deal.
And I think you're right. I think that was right around the time when Momo was being seen in Missouri.
Yeah. There was a lot. There was that same time period. There was one they called the Farmersville Monster too, and it was kind of north central Illinois, Farmersville.
Yeah,
and it was seen right around that area. It went a couple of weeks too, kind of scattered across that area along the rivers and the creeks in that area. Same way with Momo, and same way with Murfreesboro too.
Yeah. That's crazy. I'm gonna have to see if I can get somebody on with that. So, Brian says, ghost experience. I love the topic tonight. I'm very big into this stuff. I go to a lot of haunted houses and collect lots of haunted stuff. Thanks, Brian. We appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Cool.
Dinner and Spirits. What is that?
Oh, well, that is the when I was talking about earlier, we were talking about the Mineral Springs in Alton.
Yeah.
And I was talking about the event spaces. Dinner and Spirits, it kind of has two arms to it. One is a dinner tour that I do up and down the Mississippi River. We go from Alton to Grafton, do ghost stories, the pie is all bird, that kind of stuff. And then the other half of it are the themed kind of dinners that I do at the event space in the Mineral. And, it could be anything. I've got one coming up in a couple of weeks on Bonnie and Clyde. I do one on the St. Louis exorcism. I do, Edgar Allan Poe, the American Witch, all kinds of stuff. I mean, just any topic that has to do with either, true crime and ghosts, or just ghosts, or the supernatural, or a combination of all of them. It's just a dinner event that I do. It's a lot of fun. It really is. I enjoy doing them. People seem to have a good time. And so it's kind of like dinner theater, I guess, except I'm not, dressed up and acting anything out. But, it's a presentation kind of thing. So, and now we're, have moved into the new event space, which is a museum. So that's going to be a whole different twist to it. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Sounds like a wild boar, Brian. That's Bonnie and Clyde, my favorite. Brian said that's awesome.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Were they around Illinois much?
They came through a few places in Illinois. I know they robbed a service station in Pana, Illinois. That one I remember off the top of my head, but not a ton. They were based out of Texas, so
right.
A lot of Texas, a lot of Oklahoma, Louisiana. Of course, that's where they were finally caught up with.
Yeah.
So they did some. I mean, they went as far away as Minnesota a couple of times. So it's. They were kind of all over the place. But, Bonnie and Clyde, it's a great story. It really is. And during the Depression, it really got people's attention because of the love story.
Oh, they were like folk heroes.
Anything. Yeah, more than anything. Because, they didn't rob banks. They were not Dillinger or Babyface Nelson or any of those guys. They were really small timers.
Yeah.
Mostly farmers and service stations and grocery stores. Never had much money. They were always on the run. Always broke. It was really more of the pair of them. I think that the two rather than just one outlaw that really got people's attention. But it's a fun story to get to tell.
Brian said that back his grandparents owned a building in Reading, Iowa that used to be a bank, and Bonnie and Clyde robbed that bank.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what he says right now. It was. He said it was featured on the movie Highwaymen.
Oh yeah, I remember the movie. Yeah, the movie was good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, didn't Dillinger get it in Chicago at a movie? He was watching a movie and he went outside.
Well, that's the story.
Did you think do you think that wasn't him and he made it to
Well,
die?
I wrote an entire book on why it wasn't Dillinger, but
Really? What? Tell
yeah,
me about that real quick.
yeah, I mean, Dillinger is one of those characters that, it really stands out when you're talking about those, desperate, Depression era guys.
Yeah.
And, he did a lot of stuff, and a lot of the legends that came out were true. I mean, there were things like, he'd rob a bank and the farmer would hand over his money and say, no, I don't want your money. I just take banks. And, I mean, they had a science. They created a science of robbing banks back then. But Dillinger had always thought about, toward the end, getting away. He always thought that there was a way that he could, it was one big score, one last score they were going to do with the Barker gang, and then he was going to take off. He was done. He was quitting and retiring. And unfortunately, he never got to do it because the girl he'd been seeing got arrested, waiting for him, and things just sort of closed in on him. But so anyway, what I did was put together a lot of other information. I mean, the general story by the FBI was that Dillinger was set up by Anna Sage, who was a madam, took him to the movies, went to the Biograph Theater on Lincoln Avenue, and as they were leaving, Dillinger was shot to death outside the theater. Of course, none of those outlaws were ever given a chance to surrender.
Right.
The FBI guys just gunned them down. They didn't even give him a chance. So that's the same thing that happened here. And they would swear that it was Dillinger. But there's some funny things about the autopsy of that body that is documented. This isn't just somebody making stories up. When they took that body in and he was autopsied, for one thing, the eye color didn't match. They couldn't match the fingerprints. Dillinger had burned some of his fingerprints off, but it didn't really matter anyway because the fingerprint card for the body disappeared.
Wow.
It's never been seen again. The other big thing was, well, besides there was a little bit of a difference in height, but that's not a big deal. The eye color, kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
The other thing that I find is the biggest deal is that the dead man they brought into the morgue had a rheumatic heart condition. He'd had scars on his heart that he'd had since he was a kid.
And
That
Dillinger
wasn't
never.
Dillinger.
Yeah, Dillinger never had
Not
that.
only did Dillinger was in the Navy.
Yeah.
He couldn't have gone into the Navy with evidence of a rheumatic heart condition.
Right.
He couldn't have played semi-professional baseball, which he did. He also couldn't have done all the things he did robbing banks if he had been that weak of a guy. As it turned out, there was another guy who was, in the neighborhood that people knew that was mistaken for Dillinger several times, not only by the police but by the general public. And it was thought that Anna Sage and Polly Hamilton, who were friends of Dillinger's, set this guy up.
Wow.
And they had a couple of dirty cops. It's complicated. It is complicated. There were a couple of dirty cops who were involved in all this, who were advising Melvin Purvis and the FBI agents. And it's kind of like the guy who was mistaken for Bugs Moran at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. He sure looked like him, but it wasn't him.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that one, but I think this is the same kind of thing. It
Wow.
looked like Dillinger. And by the time it was over, Hoover and Purvis weren't going to admit it because as long as Dillinger didn't turn up again somewhere, they kept their mouth shut.
So he got away.
It's a theory. It's theory, but there's some pretty compelling stuff with that story, I think. So.
Well, that guy's ghost is probably running around kind of mad.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's the theory, is that the ghost people have seen it isn't Dillinger's. So,
yeah. Oh, that theater, they say they see ghosts there?
Yeah, well, in the alley.
Oh, in the alley.
Yeah, next to the theater.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, now let's go over how, if someone wants to get together with you as far as buying your books, how do they see your whole catalog so they can see what you have to offer, Troy?
Well, the easiest way to do it is just you can go straight to the store, which is AmericanHauntingsBooks.com.
Okay.
Or you can just go to our regular website, which is AmericanHauntings.net.
And everything's there?
Yep. And you can get to all the books you can get. If you go to AmericanHauntings.net, You can see the books, you can see events that are coming up, tours, everything.
That's
on that
that's
page.
awesome.
The Haunted America Conference coming up in June. This is our 27th annual conference, and we're having that in Alton again next year. Last year we sold out. We have 600 people in from all over the country for this thing. It is a lot of fun, and we're gearing up for that again in June. So.
That's cool. Lee from Rockford wants to know, what is there anything going on, or is there been more documentation about Lincoln's memorial?
As far as Lincoln's memorial goes, I haven't heard anything recently, but they don't talk about it either. Most of the stories about Lincoln's tomb and his memorial actually date back to around the time when Lincoln was not buried there yet,
Okay.
and shortly afterward. His body was actually stored nearby in another crypt while they were building the memorial, and stories started in Springfield, and this is in like 1865. They were talking about how Lincoln's ghost would walk through the cemetery. Now, whether or not that was true, if that was just a local story, I don't know. But once the tomb opened, there have been stories ever since about the sounds of people weeping and footsteps and people walking around inside the memorial. And those have been around for as long as the building has been. I think one of the most, I think fascinating stories was in 1876 when they tried to, a couple of guys tried to steal Lincoln's body.
Yeah.
For ransom. That's a great story. It really is. And, the theory was they were counterfeiters, and their master printmaker had been locked up in prison, and they wanted to get him out. And so they decided that they would steal Lincoln's body, hold him for ransom to get their guy released. And there was an undercover Secret Service agent who was, embedded in the mob that was doing it. And it's a cool story. It really is.
Did you write about this?
Anyway, yeah.
Okay.
I got a book about Lincoln called One Night in Washington.
Okay.
And it's all about Lincoln's ghost and the assassination and all that. But what's cool about the story is that after it was over and the dust had cleared, and people at first didn't even believe the story was real. They didn't think that anybody would, really have tried to steal Lincoln's body. I mean, it took them a long time to convince people it was true. But they were so afraid that it would happen again that they actually took his body out of the sarcophagus and hid it in like this inner tunnel, these catacombs inside the building.
Wow.
And then you just hid the body so that no one would find it again. And so people would come and they'd say, "Hey, are you sure you got him back? Ha ha." And, "Oh, yeah, he's right where he's supposed to be," knowing he wasn't. And that's always been, I think, probably one of the most interesting parts of the whole story. But it's not surprising that when people found out the truth that they came to believe that the tomb was haunted. But like I said, I haven't heard anything recently at all about it.
All right. Well, listen, I knew this was go quick. Well, hopefully next time we can get you on the video the whole time, because I know people want to see you when you're talking.
Sorry about that, man.
No,
I still don't know what's going on. I really don't.
It's a disembodied voice, Troy.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so.
That's all right. All right, give your contact info out one more time, please, if
Sure.
people want to look you up.
Yeah, best place to find me, AmericanHauntings.net. And, of course, I'm on all the social media stuff. But my Facebook page is probably the one that gets the most traffic. And that's just you can just look up Troy Taylor on Facebook, and you'll find me there. And I post every day with stories of ghosts and history and all that kind of stuff. So.
All right. Hey, I'll get a hold of you this summer sometime when things settle down a little bit, okay?
Yeah, sounds good, man.
All right, have a great night.
All right, you too. Thanks.
There he goes, Mr. Troy. What a nice guy. Hey, that is going to wrap it up for me on this Unknown Files. We'll be back next week, God willing, and on Saturday. If you need to get a hold of me about anything, Brian, thank you for all the comments. I appreciate that, and thank you for watching out there. We had it was fun. I love all the stories. He's the guy's an encyclopedia of paranormal and true crime stuff. It's great. All right, thanks to Revelton Distillery for helping us do this. Soldier Boy Jerky and Onyx. Always know where you're at when you're using Onyx. We'll see you next time on this program called Unknown Files. Good night, everybody. All right, gang. Thank you so much for watching. I did the reverse that time. I let them go first. Hey, thanks, everybody. If you got any suggestions or topics you want me to cover on this, just message me at outdoorsdan@mac.com, or you can always get me on Messenger. And until next time, you have a great night, and thanks for being part of the Outdoor Call Radio Network. We appreciate you. Talk to you soon. Good night, everybody.